Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Urudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are addressing the fundamentals of Advaita Vedanta, and one of the basic postulates of the Advaita Vedanta is that there is only one reality or absolute reality. So that is Brahman, that is Satchidanandan, and that which is infinite, and infinite alone is real, because any finite undergoes modifications. So anything that undergoes modifications or changes cannot be absolutely true, and the whole world is continuously changing. Therefore, it is not fulfilling the definition of what is absolutely true. So absolutely true is the one that is nityam, changeless, and that is eternal, and also that has to be infinite only, and that satisfies only Brahman. Brahman means infiniteness, and the Brahman also is Sat, Chit and Ananda Swarupam. They are Swarupa Lakshanas, because infinite cannot have any gunas, because it is intrinsic nature as though of the Brahman. It exists, since we are not talking about non-existent things, and it's a conscious entity, and that's what Vedanta defines as Prajnanam Brahma. Consciousness is infinite, and that is what is there, that is the Satyam, and that alone is the real. And anything that which is non-real has no locus for existence, and that's like my Gaga Boo Boo, because we don't know what Gaga Boo Boo is, because there is no locus for its existence. And classical example is Vanjaputraha, the son of a barren woman. So we know what we have defined, what is absolutely real, we have defined what is unreal, and whereas what other things come in between, because it's not fulfilling the definition of absolutely real, because absolutely real is the one that is changeless. Nityatvam, that means it should remain the same in all three periods of time, whereas the whole world is continuously changing, and body is continuously changing, our mind is changing, intellect is changing, everything seems to change, and change seems to be is a nature of the world itself. But if there is a changing, question is it real or unreal? So applying our rigorous definition, it doesn't fulfill the definition of a real, and it doesn't fulfill the definition of unreal. The real is that which should be changeless, and infinite or Brahman alone fulfill that criteria, and the world is changing, therefore it's not real. It's not unreal also, because unreal I can never experience. Since I am experiencing the world, therefore it comes under a category neither Sat, which is real, neither Asat, which is unreal, and therefore it is Mithya. And that's what one of the foundations of Advaita Vedanta. Mithya is not illusion, as one you defines in terms of translating the word Mithya as an illusion, but illusion and the one who sees illusion or both are Mithya. Therefore here we are talking about Mithya is transactionally real but not absolutely real. That should be the correct definition. It is Vyavaharika Satyam. Vyavaharika means transactionally real. Illusion, I cannot transact with it, but whereas it is transactionally real but not absolutely. But there is also a individual projection which we call a pratibhasika. So from the absolute point we have paramarthika satyam, from the relative point it is a transactionally real, therefore it is vyavaharika satyam, and things that I imagine which doesn't seem to be there in the transactionally real are called pratibhasikam. It is example of it is seeing a way where the rope is, I am projecting snake because I don't know or I don't see the snake. So if I don't see the rope, if I see the rope, I don't project the snake. So my projection of something other than what it is, and that's how Shankara defines atasmin tad buddhihi. I am projecting something other than what it is, and that's what essentially a mithya also. I am projecting, that is pratibhasika mithya. That means my projection, you may see the rope as a rope, but I see a snake there, and there is a conflict of understanding. Therefore inquiry is required. Inquiry is required because you say that it is a rope, I say it is a snake. Therefore we need additional means of knowledge to prove whether it is a rope or a snake. So we take a torchlight and illumine the object, and when you illumine the object, we get additional attributes of the object to determine whether it's a snake or a rope. So additional pramana is required to reveal the truth as a truth when someone says that's what you're saying is not really real. Same thing happens about the world and the Brahman. So I am seeing the world as though it is real. From me it is real, and transactionally it is real, but the sages and the Vedanta says it's not really real. So for that I need a better pramana to find out why it is not real or is it real, and that's what is the inquiry is required, and that's what is the Vedanta provides. A means of methodology, a pramana is required, a higher pramana that reveals the object as it is than what I think it is. Why do you say there is an adhyasa or error? Because I am a conscious entity and the body is unconscious, but I am taking I am the body. The error is obvious there. And when I take my mind, because anything that I know is different from the knower I am, so the subject is different from an object, and that's the fundamental as postulates of or understanding of the Advaita Vedanta. So therefore that is required to know that I am none of this. So the question is, who has the avidya? That was the fundamental question we are asking, because that seems to be the basis of the foundation of why I am seeing plurality and why I am taking the plurality as reality. And the whole life itself is tuned in that, because I take myself what I am not, and I am transacting with the world, trying to gain happiness, and all the analysis that we went through comes into picture because of the fundamental problem or a mula avidya or fundamental ignorance about myself. And the question that was posed in the Vedantic literature is, who has the source of, who is the locus of avidya? That's what we are discussing. And is avidya same as maya? Because the multitudes of things is due to power of maya. That's what Vedanta also says. I became many by using my Maya Shakti. That means it's a power rests with the Ishvara, and Ishvara can wield the Maya, and Ishvara cannot have avidya, and therefore he cannot. So where exactly is this Maya rest upon? And that has to be understood, and that's what the confusion comes into picture in trying to criticize Advaita Vedanta. Where is avidya and who has the locus of avidya? All these things become important. And in the analysis of this is what we are doing here. It says, what is the locus of avidya? It says, is it a jiva or is it a Brahman? So objection is, it cannot be Brahman or it cannot be jiva. According to the Visishtadvaita, Bhagavan Ramana says it cannot be jiva, because jiva is born or arises, jiva notion arises because of avidya. So avidya should be there before jiva came into picture, and jiva cannot have avidya, whereas it should be before jiva arises, what is there is Brahman. So it should be with Brahman only. But Brahman cannot have avidya, because Brahman is pure nature of knowledge, and avidya is ignorance, like a light and the darkness. You cannot have both. Either if you have Brahman or you cannot have avidya. So these are the arguments put forth in terms of the objections against Advaitic avidya. And you hear these things all the time. So therefore we should have clear understanding of what is the locus of avidya. Fundamentally, the locus of avidya cannot be but Brahman, because there is nothing other than the Brahman. If something other than the Brahman ceases to be Brahman. Why? Brahman means infiniteness, and there cannot exclude anything. By exclusion, the Brahman becomes finite, and therefore the definition of Brahman is infiniteness. Therefore, there cannot be anything other than Brahman. Therefore, if there is avidya, and avidya cannot but be, adhishtanam cannot but be Brahman. So how can Brahman be? Objection is, how can Brahman have an avidya? We say it doesn't say Brahman has avidya, but the locus of avidya appears to be a Brahman, because there cannot be anything other than Brahman. But how do we reconcile? One is of the nature of the light, and the other is the nature of the darkness. How can we light and darkness coexist together? This is the fundamental question that was posed by the Acharyas, and therefore we need to address this. The way we understand from the Advaitic point is the ontological difference between the Brahman and avidya. Avidya is also mithya. Why? Because it goes away or it disappears when the knowledge comes. Therefore, there is a change of state. The ignorance is also a knowledge of fact that I am ignorant. That's what one has to be understood. That one has to understand that, in the sense that even the avidya is also comes under mithya and also comes under a maya only, and therefore it cannot touch Brahman. Atyatishtat dashangulam. That means the Brahman is 10 feet away, 10 inches away. That means untouched by any of this, including the whole world creation and all that. Nothing will disturb him from the infinite point. We already said infinite cannot even create, because the creation involves a modification, and it's only an apparent creation, and therefore even avidya is also apparent only. But apparent is taken as a real, then there is a problem there. So from the Brahman point, there is no avidya. At the same time, avidya cannot be, but locus of avidya cannot but be Brahman. Both our statements are correct, because that is what Advaitic understanding has to be, because there is an ontological difference between Brahman and avidya. Avidya is only apparent but not real. Therefore, the apparent can exist anywhere, and therefore the one who sees that is the one who is having a problem, but not Brahman. At the same time, there cannot be anything in Brahman. So statement that Brahman is the locus of avidya is correct. At the same time, Brahman cannot have avidya also is correct. So who has avidya? Now if we talk about the vyavaharika satyam at the level of transactional reality, now we question only what is the locus of avidya. At this level, we have to understand what is jiva and what is jagat and what is Ishvara more clearly, and how Advaita looks at it in this problem. So when Advaita says it's a jiva is the locus of avidya, then we have to be careful what is jiva. So we need to know the structure of jiva before we say whether jiva has the locus of avidya or jiva also doesn't have. But when we equate jivatma is same as a paramatma, in the Tattvamasi statement says you are that you has to be clearly understood. What are we referring to? That you. Is it with the avidya or with the avidya that we are equating? That's why jiva structure has to be clear, and this is where we should have the Advaitic understanding should be clear in terms of what exactly jiva. This is what we are analyzing now. Jiva involves several components, and in the several components, depending upon the context, one or the two or the three are being used as jiva. So we have to be careful under what context this being referred to. And in say jiva involves essentially 5 aspects. If you look at the total concept, it says 5 components are involved in the jiva. And this has to be clear. So, in the 5 components of the jiva, one is the sthula sariram that was also discussed in the Viveka Chodamani in the beginning of the talks. So, the sthula sariram is also part of referred to jiva. Second one is the Sukshma Sariram. That's also involved and that's also being referred to as Jiva. And the third one is Karana Sariram, the causal body is also being referred to as a Jiva. And the fourth one is the Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness is a part of the Jiva. And the fifth one is the original consciousness. So we have 5 components making up of the Jiva. One is the pure, all-pervading consciousness is the original consciousness, because there cannot be anything other than Brahman has to be there in everything. So that is there, original consciousness or original existence, that Anantam, that Brahman is there. That's why in the Gita it says Brahmat Padam Brahmahavihi Brahmagnyau Brahmanahutam. So everything is nothing but Brahman, including the ladies is Brahman, ghee is Brahman, one who is pouring Brahman, all are Brahman only because there cannot be anything other than the Brahman. Even though the distinction between the ladle and the fire and the ghee and the one who is pouring, all are there, the distinctions are only superficial, only nama rupattvakam jagat. It's only at the superficial level, at the substantive level, there cannot be any differences at all, because it's one homogeneous, pure, existent consciousness and infiniteness alone, without any distinctions of any kind. So this is the Advaitic philosophy. This is also scriptural statement also. So when the Acharyas criticize Advaita, there is no scriptural support. That's not really true. They have to understand what Advaita says clearly. Then you see the scriptural support properly. So we are looking from the Jiva's point. The original consciousness has to be there. That is all-pervading consciousness. The actual, pure, the Satchidananda is pervading everything. And the second aspect is there is the Sthula Sariram, that is the gross body, and the Sukshma Sariram, the subtle body, which has components. We talk about the 4 aspects of it: the Buddhi, the mind, Ahankara, and Chitta. The Buddhi is intellect, the mind, the emotional center, Manas, and Ahankara, the ego, and the memory. All 4 aspects of Antahkaranam are also involved. So when I refer to Jiva, say I am the one engineer, he is now a Jiva being identified with the intellectual personality. So I love her, I love this, all that we are talking about, now one identifying with the emotional personality. And when I say that I am able to recollect and I am able to remember, I forgot everything, now we are trying to about with the memory aspect of it. And I am the one who did it, that Ahankara, ego is all the time in every transactions appearing as. So when I identify I am this, you are identifying with the Ahankara. And these are all identifications of a Jiva only, depending upon the context. And when I am here and I am not there, so we are talking about from the Sthula Sariram. I have a back pain, I have this pain, and I am not able to see properly. All these things, essentially we are talking about either Annamaya Kosha with respect to the physiological functions, or body functions, or body itself. I am fat, I am lean, I am tall, I am brown, I am white. All those qualifications of the skin is referred to as my qualifications. So depending upon the context, one says what is Jiva. So Jiva includes these 5 fundamental aspects: the Sthula Sariram, the gross body; the Sukshma Sariram, the subtle body with all its components; and the Karana Sariram, the causal body that is present mostly in the deep sleep state; and the reflected consciousness and the original consciousness. So what is the reflected consciousness? Because there is a subtle body, there is the total consciousness, the original consciousness, get reflected in the subtle body, and that is also, it makes the instruments active, dynamic, and as though alive, or as though conscious entity. So they call reflected consciousness, or RC, or essentially Chidabhasa. And that is to be there. Without that, the other things are all matter, whether it's a subtle matter or a gross matter. Matter cannot activate itself, matter cannot function, and we cannot say that Antakarana is the locus of avidya. When we state a statement, it has to be supported by the reflected consciousness. Reflected consciousness will be always there as long as the subtle body is there, and since the original consciousness is all the time there. So therefore, this reflected consciousness makes the inert equipment, Antakarana, as though it is a conscious entity. Now that is also Jiva now. So Jiva component includes the reflected consciousness. Reflection depends upon original light as well as the reflecting medium. And original light is homogeneous consciousness. There is nothing about it. Every time it is pure, absolute, uninterrupted consciousness. And therefore that's always there all the time. Only thing that is changing is only the reflecting medium. So depending on the reflecting medium, the reflected consciousness also is either bright or a dull, all that. So attributes of the reflected consciousness is also involved depending on the reflecting medium. So we have a reflecting medium, reflected consciousness, and the original consciousness. In the reflecting medium, we have the Sukshma Sarira, the Karana Sarira, the causal body, and the subtle body, and the gross body. So who is Jiva or what is Jiva, depending upon the context in which we are referring to. And depending upon that, Jiva is defined. But Jiva includes all the 5 aspects. What are the 5 aspects? The Sthula Sariram, that is gross body, the Sukshma Sariram, the subtle body, and the causal body, Karana Sariram, and the reflected consciousness in the 3 bodies, in all these 3 bodies, and the original consciousness, which is always there. So who has the avidya? Now which component has the avidya has to be understood now. It is not the original consciousness, is always pure, and it is the reflected consciousness with the things have the problem. So we have to find out where is the locus of avidya, and this we go into more details in the next talk. With this we'll stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.